Hello and welcome. Have you ever stopped to think about how someone actually puts a grade on a conversation or, a really creative piece of writing? It feels impossible, right? Like trying to grade the wind. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on something called assessment design. We're going to look at the incredible science and, frankly, the art that goes into making tests that are fair, accurate, and actually mean something. Okay, let's get into it.
It all really starts with this one simple question. How do you grade a conversation? Seriously, unlike a math problem that has one and only one right answer, the way we express ourselves is messy, it's creative, it's interactive. And that is the central challenge we're going to tackle today.
And believe me, it is a challenge. Testing what experts call productive skills, that's just a fancy term for speaking and writing, is nothing like making a simple quiz. It's a whole different ballgame.
And this really lays it out, doesn't it? On one side, you have your classic multiple choice test. It's objective, there's a single right answer, and a machine can score it flawlessly. But on the other side, you have a speaking test. It's subjective, it's open-ended, and it completely depends on human judgment. The whole goal here is to make that human judgment just as reliable and just as fair as the machine.
This is where assessment design comes into play. And it's not just about whipping up a few questions. Look at the keywords here. It's a systematic process. The goal is to make sure our tests validly and reliably measure what they claim to measure. We're not just making a pop quiz, we're building a precision measurement tool.
So how do we build that tool? Well, you start with a blueprint. Every single well-designed test, and I mean every one, is built on 4 core non-negotiable principles. You can think of them as the constitution for building a good test.
First up, and honestly the most important, is validity. This is the big one. It asks a really simple question. Are we actually testing what we think we're testing? I mean, if you want to test someone's ability to debate, you can't just give them a grammar worksheet, right? The task itself has to get them to use the language in a real, authentic way.
But a valid test doesn't mean much if it isn't also reliable. And that brings us to principle 2, reliability. This is all about consistency. Think about it. If you stepped on your bathroom scale and it gave you a totally different number every time, you'd throw it out, right? A test is no different. A student should get pretty much the same score no matter which qualified person grades it or whether they take it on a Monday or a Friday.
So your test can be valid and reliable, but is it fair? This is our third principle, and it's really the ethical heart of the whole thing. It means making sure that nobody is at a disadvantage just because of their background. For example, if a writing topic is about a specific holiday that only some people celebrate, it's not a fair test of writing, it's become a test of their cultural knowledge. And that's a huge problem.
Okay, so our test is valid, reliable, and fair. Fantastic. But there's one last reality check we have to pass. Practicality. It would be amazing to run a 2-day super in-depth simulation for every single student. But if you have a tight budget, a short timeline, and only 2 examiners for 500 students, well, it's just not going to happen. A test has to actually work in the real world. All right, so with those 4 principles as our guide, we're ready to start building. And designing a good test really is like a construction project. It's an active, step-by-step process. So let's walk through the 7 main stages. This is basically our roadmap for the whole build. We start with the why and the what, and then we figure out the how. From there, we set the rules, design a scoring system, train the judges to make sure they're consistent, and then, and this is key, we test our own test. Let's dig into some of the most important stages. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with step 1, define the purpose. The why behind the test changes everything that comes after. Are we just trying to give some helpful feedback in a classroom setting? Or are we making a huge, high-stakes decision about whether someone gets a professional license? The purpose totally sets the stage. Next up, we have to define the construct. Now, construct sounds a little jargony, I know, but it's simple. It just means, what specific skills are we actually looking for? You have to break it down. Are we listening for grammatical accuracy? Are we checking their vocabulary range? Are we watching how well they interact with someone? You can't measure something if you haven't clearly defined it first. So once you know what you want to see, how do you get the person to show it to you? That's step 3, designing the task. If you want to measure someone's ability to negotiate, a simple interview isn't going to cut it. You probably need a role play. If you want to see if they can write professionally, you ask for a report or an email, not a poem. The task has to bring the construct to life. Now, step 4 is about setting the conditions, like time limits and stuff. But once the rules are set, we get to step 5. How do we score this thing?
You've basically got two main flavors. With analytic scoring, it's like a detailed report card. You get separate scores for grammar, vocabulary, fluency, and so on. With holistic scoring, the grader gives one single score based on their overall impression. Which one you choose goes all the way back to the test's purpose. Now, a huge part of making a test reliable is step 6, training the raters. Since humans are doing the grading, you have to get them all on the same page, making sure they apply the rules in the exact same way. And only after they're trained can we get to the final stage of the build. Step 7, trialing and revision. You have to beta test your assessment. You give it to a small group to see what works and what breaks. Are the instructions confusing? Is the timing off? You find and fix these things before the test goes live and actually counts.
Okay, so we've followed the blueprint, we've built our test, now it is time for one final inspection. We've got to make sure we haven't fallen into any common traps that could totally sink all of our hard work.
And here are some of the biggest culprits you'll see. Things like vague scoring rules, where a good performance is totally up for interpretation, or tasks that accidentally end up testing someone's knowledge about science instead of their ability to explain it. A really well-designed test sees these problems coming a mile away and is built to avoid them from the very start.
So let's just zoom out for a second here and ask the big question. Why does all of this incredibly detailed work matter so much? What's the big picture?
It really comes down to this one powerful idea. Every single piece we've talked about, the purpose, the skills we define, the tasks we design, and the way we score them, they all have to be perfectly aligned. When they all work together in harmony, the test stops being just a hurdle to jump over, and it becomes a true, fair reflection of what that person can actually do. And that leaves us with one final thought. When it's done right, is an assessment really just a score? Or is it a way of telling a story? A rich, detailed story about a person's abilities, their strengths, and what they're truly capable of. Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.